to another episode of The Inside. I'm here today with Steve Van Til, CEO of Brevo. I would say I'm here with Steve again because we've done this a couple times. So, hey, Steve,
We
thanks
have.
again for joining. I really appreciate it.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, there's some recent news that you've all announced, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But actually, we're going to get into really what it means, and take it from a different approach, like you and I discussed before we came on. Is you could read the press releases and you can get that, but this really comes down to data. And actually, too, if you look at the security megatrends, one that came out, data was on there. It seems to come up on all of it. We're now finally getting to the point where it's sort of like the okay, now what side of data, and we're starting
hmm
to see it because we're starting to see people get implemented. So, if you want, why don't you kick it off a little bit about what the news was, and then let's jump into the talk around data.
Sure. So the news was, for those who haven't seen the press release, we just announced the release of something called Brevo Access, which is a fourth generation version of our system. And this is a day that I've been looking forward to for 2.5, 3 years, because that's how long ago we started thinking about this and we started working on it. So, we introduced the first cloud-based access control system almost 20 years ago. And this is easily the single largest software release we've done since then. So 2.5 years, we doubled the size of our engineering team to get this done. And the impetus for it really was a couple of years ago saying, where is the next place that the security industry is going to go? Where is cloud-based access control going to go? Because cloud is pretty ubiquitous at this point. It's not really the differentiator that it once was. And it was very clear to me that data was going to become as important in security as it is in every other vertical market, from healthcare to automotive to finance to web to marketing, you name it. Everybody is on the path of acquiring more data, analyzing more data, and using it to train machine learning algorithms. And I thought, this has got to come to security. It'll probably come to security a little bit later, just like most things do. But 2.5 years ago, it was very clear to me that that's where we needed to be. And so that started the evolution of this new branch of our software. And the single biggest thing about it is we put in place a dual data path architecture where there's kind of a fork, if you will, and there's a real-time feed, just like there always has been. So you're watching events, you're getting notifications, all that sort of thing. But the really interesting new piece is that we're building it into an analytical database. And that's the new piece that allows us to run AI on top of it, allows us to run machine learning on top of it, allows us to run open business intelligence tools on top of it. And it finally, especially for larger organizations that have so much data coming in anyway, it allows them to understand their data in ways that they've never been able to. And so it ends the irony, I suppose, of everybody putting in more and more devices, more and more IoT, but then having too much data to see what's going on. So clarity around what's happening, you really only get that with analytics.
It does make me think about sort of the exciting parts of what's to come with it too, because at first we're talking a lot of data visualization, and then if we follow the trends of machine learning and AI and everything everybody talks about, like automation and I don't know, deeper responsive systems and things like that. This is the plumbing part, if you would, of getting that in place so that you could start to do that, and that's sort of like typically step one, it seems like, in order to get to, but you can instantly start to deliver some value just on interesting information that is actionable and that people want, and it sounds like that's what you all are doing.
Yeah, so the first piece that came out a couple of weeks ago with the software release itself is a BI tool called Data Explorer. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to go in there, create your own visualizations with the tools that are there, do your own analytics, create metrics that measure the things that you want to. And that's the tool that's in there right now. It's very open-ended. The next thing that's coming out that's built on top of the same platform is called Snapshot. And that's an analytic that uses machine learning, and it runs at the union of visual data and discrete data from access control systems in order to provide a better image of what's happening inside of a facility and to build up a repository of visually coded events that then form something that's kind of like a yearbook, if you picture, what a yearbook looks like. So that's called Snapshot, and it allows people to get to the video they want to even more quickly than they could before. The next piece that's coming out in the beginning of next year is anomaly detection. And so anomaly detection, as you know, gets trained off of existing data patterns. That's how you establish what's normal versus what's abnormal. And so with the amount of data that we've been able to accumulate over many years of running this kind of system, we see ourselves as being in the best position to provide those anomaly detection algorithms, because there's this saying in machine learning that whoever has the most data wins. And this is the case where the training of the algorithms is the most important thing to get a good anomaly detection feature in place.
Yeah, which is great because it's finally moving beyond the keeping bad people out and locking and unlocking side of this, and now you're getting to really like building operations and workflow management and actionable information other than just triggering the door to unlock and lock. So I like that. Now, the question I have on you on this side is that because like you said, that most people, if you were to ask them, if you're to say, who wants big data, everyone raises their hands, right? And you're like, so what are you going to do with it? A little bit of confusion of that, what it actually means in the application of it. But most people believe that AI and data and that are going to be more and more important to business. But we don't see a lot within our industry of that actually changing behavior. For you, as someone who is doing it, has been leading it, and I know how you approach these things, but I don't know how most people do on that end. But like, what is your thoughts on like, what does it take, like, for our industry to tip into, if you would, more into the actionable side of these things that we see happening at a steadier pace? Or is it just we're going to be slow always to adopt these things and eventually it will happen? Like, how do you see it? How do you see it unfolding, if you would, for our industry?
So I think there's a couple of things. Obviously, the products have to be there that provide or deliver on the promise of actionable insights and that sort of thing. And it looks like some folks are starting to do that piece, but that can fall on deaf ears. So a lot of this depends on who you're talking to, who's making decisions, and who's going to consume the information. So the industry has been fretting for a long time that the security was going to get folded under the chief information officer, and that was going to be a bad thing. My view of that is exactly the opposite. I actually think it's a great thing, because you've got a consumer of data and a consumer of software services that has a much broader exposure to things that are outside the security arena. And when they see something like analytics or machine learning or business intelligence, they recognize, oh, this is just like what I deal with over here in finance, or this is just like what I deal with over here in the tools that I'm providing for my company to do supply chain management. And so I think having, there's this old phrase, an educated consumer is our best customer. I think that's very true of these new services in security. And so having people that are at the CIO's table, the CTO's table at these customers, the CISO, whichever one of those C-level people it is, that's the thing that matters, because otherwise you're not talking to the right people. So that whole shift is a big part of having this work for the industry and having it work for individual companies that are trying to move the needle in that direction.
Yeah, very much so. And this is where it gets into also then, which will lead me to my next question around on the pricing side. So your recent introduction to the different pricing tiers that you have, but in our conversations, a lot of that is sort of the expectations of how you act when you start selling systems like this, right? So and I like to talk about a little bit that we take old business processes and apply it to new ideas and new process, new product offerings, and almost expect the same returns, where you have an opportunity and now permission, more or less, to change the way you do things. One of those is on how we price and the expectations of how we introduce service to people, and service meaning software, not necessarily install, but how we introduce that to them and how we sell it to them. That all changes too. So can you talk to me a little bit about sort of the mindset shift and the business shift that goes along with these new features, if you would, or products? I'll call them products. These new products that you have being brought to market. How does that shift the way that you all take it to market?
Sure. So for people that may not have seen the press release and some of those details, what we did with the release of this new software suite was we made it in 3 different bundles. One is standard, one is pro, one is enterprise. And this is really nothing new because every single enterprise application software vendor in the world has sold their software in 3 tiers or 4 tiers or 5 tiers in different bundles. That hasn't necessarily been the case in security. There's been obviously a lot of a la carte items that people could add up and get the same effect, but there weren't these sort of clear categories that sorted out customers who could say, oh, well, I'm an enterprise customer, or I'm not quite an enterprise customer, but I'm also not the most basic customer, so I'm going to pick the thing that's in the middle. The top level there, the enterprise, I think is the most interesting one in terms of where the industry stands today and where it could be in the future. And that's because I think the industry and its software pricing and its subscription pricing has systematically undervalued what it's delivering. And what I mean by that is consider, for example, what a seat license for, I'll not name names, but any CRM system, any financial system that comes in SaaS packaging, it's a couple $100 a month per seat, right? You look at the same pricing for what those folks might be spending on their security system. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's a SaaS system like Brevo. They might be spending $1,000 a month on security for their entire operation, right? That's equivalent to 5 seats for somebody that's sitting there doing customer support or tech support or entering orders or something like that. You're going to tell me that an entire security system is not worth any more than 5 seats to, a sales support system? I don't believe that. And so I think that it's worth far more than that, and that being at the table of the CIO and any other C-level function inside of a company is a ticket for the industry to getting the recognition it deserves for the value it's providing.
Yeah, and I would say also that goes along with that too is the more in line with the acting as if though it's the way you communicate it, the way you package it, the way that it's brought to marketplace also changes in that regard too, because the expectations I think of when you buy something like that, if you look at, let's say I'm wearing a shirt that says Salesforce on it, so like their type of product, it comes to you in a certain way as well that does deliver a level of I call it factor
Yeah.
of what you would expect from a product like that, and it's handled that same way. So treating it, and I actually think a lot of that comes down to you looking at those things as it's a product
Mhm.
that is being sold, and you treat it the exact same way that we do a lot of the hardware is now packaged properly and done on the software. So yeah, I mean, it's a complete mind shift change of the industry, and it's not a case of, I guess I also want to say, it's not a case that the other is bad. It's just this is different
Right.
and needs to be handled differently. And maybe it's a different way that some of the people that are existing in the channel also will change with it. It's not that they're good and the others are bad. It's just that's what, and new ones will come in. And again, we get into a lot of those conversations where I think it tries to become very binary, like in that there's a good, but I actually think we could celebrate the past, because the difference too, tell me what you think of this, is that we start celebrating the fact that we've been doing this for a very long time. So it comes with a level of expertise. This is just another level on top of the expertise that we already bring. And we shouldn't shy away from that either. And really that's how I think we can demand space and fill the opportunity of what frankly customers are looking for.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The opportunity here for integrators or for somebody else in this new world of data and artificial intelligence and machine learning is tremendous, because if you think about any customer out there, right? What's an anomaly for one customer is not an anomaly for another customer. What's an anomaly for this building at this time may not be an anomaly in other buildings and other properties at other times. And so this whole business of being able to craft or really to train the machine learning algorithm on what's bad in your world versus what's good in your world is an area that requires consulting. It requires knowledge of the physical deployment of security assets. Where are the door controllers? Where are the video cameras? What do they mean? Are they in critical areas? So it takes a deep, deep knowledge of what is physically installed there. Well, who has that knowledge? The integrators have that knowledge. So that's the first step up. The next thing is you have to understand, or at least be able to extract some amount of historical data for that facility and have somebody tag events that are in there and say, this is bad, that's not bad. And there are ways to do this that are more automated or incorporated into the day-to-day operations where it learns by nature of people using the system. But there are also ways to kind of preload it. There's a consulting opportunity there for people to be a part of training these algorithms with the right data and with the right inputs and the right tagging so that it gives the output that we all hope to have with AI and machine learning. So that whole value area is something that, let's say, service providers, manufacturers like us, we don't provide that. That's not part of our business model because we're not consultants. The integrators don't do it today because they haven't added the staff to go in there and understand these things. And they're fairly new in products like ours, right? So there isn't necessarily a professional group that knows how to do these things, but it is an emerging area. And if you look again outside the industry, there are people who aren't writing the algorithms, they're not building the databases, they're not creating the products, but they are training those products on the customer data set. That is a new skill set, it is a new area, and it is something that's begging to be filled. And I think that the integrators are in the best position to walk in, learn those new skill sets, and make these systems really sing for the customer.
Yeah, it also makes me think about like the difference between, maybe this is a bad analogy or good analogy. We'll see as I go through it. But it reminds me of when we moved from magazine print ads to digital ads, and you were able to also then at that point understand performance of it. You know, like how many impressions, things like that, and the rest of that happened, and how many people clicked on it, click through rates. It made it more. It just you could actually see a number versus here's how many people that read our publication. So it makes me also think, though, I wonder, as if I'm in the specifier community, as they are specifying systems to fit a certain type of customer, you never really know if that system actually fit them properly until something bad happens, right? That
Right.
Now you think that these systems actually have the ability to change and morph, but also score back to basically say, hey, I don't even have a good example of what it would look like because I think about it more, but it just makes me believe that as there's more data coming in and out, and you start to understand the customers a little bit, like you said, the anomalies and the rest of it about different people, that these systems will be able to start to get customized and become far better for the customers.
Yeah, the analogy with print ad versus the migration into digital advertising has to remind everybody of what is widely, acknowledged as the worst invention ever, the QCAT. Maybe it was before your time, Lee, but it was at this junction where people had begun putting digital things like early versions of QR codes or barcodes in their print ads. And then you had this QCAT thing that would plug into the USB port on your PC, right? And you would point it at the ad, and that would trigger this whole response from the advertiser of sending you stuff and getting your information and all of that. And it was this attempt to bridge an analog medium into a digital medium. It was a horrible experience. It failed horribly. They'd sent out millions of these little QCATs to people, and it was trying to do a new thing without letting go of the past. And so if we don't let go of the past in security and we keep trying to do things the old way, but with the new tools can't do what they want to, and the old thing can't do what it used to. So you don't have anything. You have to move both pieces at the same time, or you'll end up as a QCAT.
I think there's a better way to end this than that. I'm going to leave that alone. No, but Steve, honestly, that is great because it's so dead on. So if people want to find out more information, brevo.com for more information on that end, and people know how to get a hold of you on LinkedIn, but we'll add all of that on it as well. But thank you for taking the time. It's a great conversation. It's exciting to see where the industry's going. It's stuff that, folks like me, you, and there's a whole bunch of us that want to see it move that direction. So this is a shining example of that happening. So thanks for the leadership on it, and I appreciate you spending the time.
Hey, my pleasure, Lee. It's always a great conversation.
Thank you.
Bye.